There are many folks here. We come from different branches of government, but we're together in a common cause. We are here at an inflection point in our fight, not just against the COVID pandemic, but also against the enormous upheaval it has meant for thousands upon thousands of New Jerseyans. And Frank, you said it well. And let's remind ourselves, we are not out of the fight. Let me just tell you, today's numbers alone, over 1,100 new cases, 13 confirmed losses of life, 598 folks in our hospitals, 99 of whom are in the intensive care unit. 90 people went into the hospital yesterday. Thank God 76 left. The positivity rate is now over 5%. The rate of transmission is actually coming down a little bit. I say all that just to remind ourselves that we are still in the fight. Please get vaccinated if you are not vaccinated. Please get vaccinated. Period. These folks back there have lost their mind. You've lost your minds. You are the ultimate knuckleheads, and because of what you are saying and standing for, people are losing their life. People are losing their life, and you have to know that. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror.
This is New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy making those of us who come from the Garden State really, really proud. Because at the end of the day, what those protesting safety measures like masks and vaccines don't realize is that while they claim to want to protect people, it's the actions that they're promoting that are actually causing the loss of lives. Just look at the numbers. Of the 164 million Americans who've been vaccinated, 0.004% contracted COVID anyway, and 0.001% have died, or just over 1,000 people. Again, out of 164 million. All the while, of those who haven't been vaccinated, we've seen over 620,000 deaths. So between 620,000 and just over 1,000, remind me again which option here is the dangerous one. Now, as far as Governor Murphy's concerned, these anti-vaxxers out here protesting would be well served to stop shouting and start listening, because it was under his leadership that a state with the worst outbreak in the entire nation became one of the safest. He led the state to beat its deadline to vaccinate 70% of the adult population well before the country as a whole reached that benchmark. And thanks to that, New Jersey was able to have most restrictions lifted in June amid lower infections, hospitalizations, and deaths. Now, since then, the Delta variant has surged across this country, made possible in part by the fact that a sizable faction of certain Americans have decided that vaccines are some communist plot to microchip the population, the same population that literally has microchipped cell phones in their pockets. And even still, New Jersey, under Murphy's leadership, has been able to keep hospitalizations to a 26% increase since last week. And while those 598 hospitalized New Jerseyans is still a big number, it's nowhere near the more than 2,000 who were hospitalized 4 months ago in New Jersey on April 3rd, meaning that even this surge is being relatively well contained. Compare that with a state like Florida, whose governor seems to be scientifically engineering his COVID response to fill up as many cemeteries as possible, which this week broke its all-time record for hospitalizations, with over 10,000. That's more than were hospitalized at the peak of this pandemic in July of 2020, when there wasn't even a vaccine. In other words, Florida has botched this pandemic response so aggressively that even with a life-saving vaccine, free and readily available, more people are hospitalized now than ever. That is the response that these anti-vax protesters are pushing for. That's the so-called safer alternative they want to see. And these anti-vaxxers will point to the fact that breakthrough cases are occurring as a means to undermine the efficacy of the vaccine. But health officials have maintained that breakthrough cases are expected, extremely rare, and not a sign of vaccine failure. What it is a sign of is A, the fact that a lingering pandemic will of course create variants, which make breakthrough cases more likely, meaning that by refusing to get vaccinated, you're actually helping create the variants that are then leading to more breakthrough cases that vaccine opponents are then citing. Basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. And B, that no vaccine is 100% effective, which we've known since day one. That's why the point here is to vaccinate as many people as possible, because vaccines are imperfect. That's why achieving herd immunity is so crucial right now, since the lack of herd immunity will only foster an environment for the virus to thrive and mutate and, yes, possibly render that vaccine less effective. And yet, I guess this simple science has somehow managed to escape all of those anti-vaxxers who got their medical degrees from Facebook.com. And as far as these anti-science, self-proclaimed armchair doctors are concerned, we've coddled them for far too long. We coddled them when they push back against testing and contact tracing, when they push back against stay-at-home orders, when they push back against masks, and now, while they're pushing back against vaccines. They claim to hate this pandemic, and yet they are the reason that this pandemic is perpetually being prolonged. If everyone simply did their part, we wouldn't be dealing with yet another surge, even despite the presence of a vaccine that could otherwise put this pandemic behind us. They claim that this is about freedom, but what about everyone else's freedom not to contract a deadly virus? What about everyone else's freedom to not have to worry about themselves or their families or their loved ones dying? What about everyone else's freedom, those who've made sacrifices to keep us all safe over the last year, to be able to live their lives? These conservatives are always looking out for the selfish few whose backwards ideas are only serving to prolong the damage. Maybe they should start rewarding the people who are actually doing what needs to be done to get life back to normal. So with that said, it's time for businesses to mandate vaccines or proof of negative tests. We've sat idly by for far too long as anti-vaxxers dictated the terms of the conversation, only to watch that approach send us into a wholly avoidable fourth wave. So instead of listening to an ill-informed mob, maybe we defer to experts. And by the way, that's the approach Murphy is taking in New Jersey, requiring shots or testing of employees for hospitals, jails, veterans' homes, and other congregate settings, and allowing private care institutions to set even more stringent rules. He joins other Democratic governors and even the Biden administration in requiring vaccines where they can be required. Why? Because if their priority is saving lives and knowing that 99.9% of those hospitalized and dying are the unvaccinated, then this is the only and best option to ensure the most people survive. And that is the only thing that matters right now. And by the way, just a point of personal privilege, Murphy's leadership in New Jersey is personal for me. I've mentioned this before, but both of my parents are healthcare workers in the state, and my fear of losing them as cases skyrocketed in that state was only matched by my appreciation for the state's competent leadership when they very quickly got the outbreak under control. And while I still have plenty of pride for my home state, mostly for its bagels, I'm especially grateful that people like Phil Murphy are looking out for the well-being of my loved ones. And I'm sure that's a sentiment echoed by millions and millions of New Jerseyans. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch Fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.